PayPal's giving CNBC an inside look at how it identified and closed its $3 million pay gap. Julia Boorstin spoke with CEO Dan Schulman and has more on how PayPal is leading the charge in Silicon Valley for equal pay. Hi, Julia.
Hi, Contessa. Well, since CEO Dan Schulman spun off PayPal from eBay about 4 years ago, he's made diversity and inclusion a priority. Now, back then, his first step was to guarantee equal pay. But back then, his HR team couldn't tell him whether or not they were paying fairly across gender and race. Take a listen.
I said right away to that, that's ridiculous. I mean, like, we should know right away if we're paying equally or not. And I want an outside study to go and look at this. And we want to address this gap, if there is one, immediately.
That first year, the company found and fixed a $3 million pay gap. Since then, PayPal has reviewed its 20,000 employees' pay and performance 3 times a year, with audits by 2 outside companies. Here's how it works. HR sets a pay range for each job category and location, looking at demand for certain skills as well as experience. Then, managers evaluate employees' performance across 12 categories, including communication and collaboration, and whether they've hit specific targets.
I am being as fair as possible and as equitable as possible by using these very objective frameworks.
But bias still creeps in, so HR works with consultants to compare pay across the whole company to ensure there's no gender or racial discrimination.
So we don't leave it to chance. And we don't leave it to individual managers to pick their favorite people.
3 years after fixing that original $3 million pay gap, the company found and fixed a pay gap just a tenth that size, roughly $300,000.
I think it's beginning to be a part of the culture of PayPal, but you cannot step away from this for a second.
Now, that was just the first step. Schulman says now they're focused on what's actually the harder part, which is closing the gap in both management as well as in engineering roles. You can find more from our interview and PayPal's plan to close its diversity gaps on CNBC.com. Back over to you.
Julia, these studies of pay parity are not cheap to do. We were talking to Caesars about 6 months ago when they had the conclusions and had drawn it out, because, as you say, that there's all these factors in. Generally speaking, when you're talking to companies who say they want to pay people equally, is there the will to go in and spend the money, make that investment in looking at the issue?
Well, what's interesting, Contessa, here is that Schulman really pointed out that $3 million may have seemed a lot to his finance team if he was talking about doing it in 1 quarter. But the reality is it really is a very small amount, a drop in the bucket if you look at it over the life of a company. And he says that the investment in pay parity, both in the actual amount that they had to pay up front and the smaller amounts that they pay every year, and then also just the commitment to the consultants to help have a third-party review of this. He says it's absolutely paid off. It's helped them recruit better employees in a very, very competitive job market, and it's also helped them sort of ensure that they have a diversity of opinions in a room where they want to have a product for the whole world. They want to make sure they have a diverse set of employees as well, creating that product.